So, David.
So, Michelle.
Well, look, I was going to bring something, but then
Yeah, I'm ready. Go for it. Hit me with it. I'm ready.
But you know what? I lost everything that I was going to bring in an email.
You lost your homework.
I lost my homework. My dog ate it.
Your dog ate your homework?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Dad, well, I got nothing.
Tech issues, so we've got nothing to talk about.
Funnily enough.
Oh, my God, you have something, don't you?
I have something. The ASIO email scandal last week.
Speaking of emails. Look, see that segue? See that segue?
Yeah, see the way that magic. Well, guess what?
What?
The Americans are not to be outdone by ASIO.
Really?
Oh, they've screwed up massively. They've screwed up over like a decade-long period. An email mistake. So I thought, you know what, there's a lot of mistakes being made at the moment.
A lot of fuck-ups.
Let's have a look. Let's not just have a look at the fuck-ups that are going on right now. Let's have a look at some of the mistakes that have been made over the last, say, 100 years, because there's some absolute chef's kiss doozies.
I can't wait. You're listening to I Spy, the accidental leak of Australian intelligence. What's going on?
I just had an accidental leak.
Oh, isn't there something for that?
It's running into my sock. Oh.
Hello and welcome to I Spied. My name's Michelle Stevenson. I'm here with David Callan, and we're gonna touch.
You challenged me to something that you didn't step up the challenge. It's like the classic. I'll see you at the bus stop at 3. We're having a fight, and then I get to the bus stop, and there's no one at the bus stop.
Well, we wanted to talk about fuck-ups, and I thought, who better to talk about fuck-ups than the person who is the biggest fuck-up when it comes to ASIO?
Not anymore.
Great.
Not anymore. Now, look, there was the big scandal that came out about ASIO sending 150 emails to the wrong people.
Yes.
Right? Well, not the wrong people, just the same email went to 150 people, which means 149 people
outed.
They
were all outed. They're all outed.
They are all outed as being people that aren't in ASIO, which is
they were all outed as people who weren't good enough.
I mean, who needs that kind of pressure in your life? But here's the thing. The Pentagon have gone one better.
Of course.
Right. So the Pentagon have been having a little problem with typos because the end of your, like an email in the Pentagon is .mil.
Okay.
M-I-L.
Okay.
The end of an email for something like Mali is ML, the country of Mali, Northern Africa.
Okay, right.
It's a tiny little spot. But the thing about Mali is an ally of Russia. So for the last 10 years,
oh my God,
people at home have been sitting there in Mali going, what? What's the Pentagon want? Click. Oh my God. Now, the Pentagon assured the Americans that it's nothing much. It's nothing classified. It just happens to be things like, travel documents, budgets, like all the stuff that you really want the Russians to know about. So this is the thing that I thought, I was sitting here going, when Michelle challenges me, when that's finished, then the following episode will be about mistakes that other people have made, not me. And unfortunately, you're going to have to sit through this one. Now, have I told you about the story when I sent the wrong email to someone at ASIO?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And that became a wonderful romantic interlude in my life.
This has turned into a real life marriage, our relationship, where after 3 years you start repeating stories.
I've heard the story, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. Now, here's the thing. There's one of the things that's coming out at the moment. It's called the insider threat. Right.
Insider threat.
Insider threat. Somebody inside. Now, it doesn't just mean that that's a spy that's penetrated your organisation. It's an idiot that's penetrated your organisation as well.
Happens all the time.
Insider threats are really common, right?
And quite often they don't mean to be threats.
Well, of course. Most of the time they don't mean to be the threat. I mean, the great one that came out was Donald Trump when he leaked a whole bunch of Israeli intelligence to the Russians. The Russians, of course, are allies of the Syrians, so they sort of passed that on to the Syrians. And mainly it was about Israeli Mossad's work against ISIS. And basically, the problem was there was no way of proving it until a journalist at a press conference turned around to Donald Trump and went, "Why did you leak all that stuff about Israel?" And he went, "I never did it. I didn't say Israel. Israel was never mentioned. I just said that there were people doing great work against ISIS in the following cities." And Israel were like going, "Shut the fuck up." Right? So this was, again, admittedly, Donald Trump's an idiot. Right. And for any of our listeners out there that believe that Donald Trump is not an idiot, I'm sorry, I believe he is. Now, the thing with that is that.
Well, Donald Trump is, he's
a serial leaker.
Yeah. And he's also just so capable of, taking himself out.
And look, honestly, if there were human plumbers, they'd be taking one look at Donald Trump and going, sorry, mate. Yeah, it's just too big a job for me.
Yeah, there's not enough stuff I can bring to plug all the holes that are leaking.
Exactly. Now, the other one that came up, this is an interesting one. It's not a government leak, but it is a high security leak. Samsung, one of the biggest producers of intelligence chips, was it semiconductors and Intel, or was it? Start that again. Samsung.
Okay.
Samsung, one of the biggest producers of chips for computers and pretty much everything we play with, right? These guys basically turned around and started using ChatGPT to check their coding to see, like they'd give it to the ChatGPT and go, is my coding correct? So they're getting their homework checked by an AI. The problem is when you put something in ChatGPT, yeah, I'll get that.
You did this last time.
I know.
When we spoke about this, you kept saying GTP. And it's GPT.
It's GPT. All right. So when you put something into ChatGPT, leave that in. It's fine.
Yeah, we will.
When that happens, it's shareable. Like the AI will share it. So suddenly, not only are they putting their coding into a system that's now open source, they're also putting their coding. They're putting budgetary documents. They're putting in all this information that is suddenly sourced to the point where Samsung has now turned round to their staff and said, you can only put 1,024 characters into GPT. God damn it.
I love this.
I've got it actually written in front of me, and it's because I've written it the wrong way around. Yeah. See, typo.
Yep.
That's the big thing, typos, but also sharing it on sources that you don't want it to have access to. So Samsung employees are now limited to 124 characters before they've got to stop putting information into ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, I mean, also they shouldn't be using it.
Well, that's the other thing. Samsung's now turned around and said we're going to create our own in-house AI to do this. But this is the problem is people, and this comes down to the real point of that with all of these accidental leaks is people are human. Spies are human. They do stupid things. It's not that they want to do stupid things. They just do. There's
But if the Pentagon has a real issue with like the last few letters like .mil instead of .ml, why don't they just change it?
Well, that's the point. But the thing is that's a system that's in place and it could take a lot to change that little system. And also that means you've then got to go through the system and review and change everything.
Well, I think that if we've learned anything over the past, few years is that the Pentagon, the White House could probably overhaul their systems.
They could do a lot of work. Yeah, they're long due for a good sit down and go, where are we going wrong?
Yes.
And the answer is everywhere. Now, the other one is politicians just mislay this stuff. And there was a great...
Hillary Clinton.
Well, not just Hillary Clinton, Biden. Now, the interesting thing is Biden has all those confidential documents that he had in his on the floor of his garage, right? Now, the only reason that he's under special investigation, and this is from an archivist from the National Archive in the United States, the reason that they've had to do a special investigation is because they had to do it for Trump.
Yes.
And they've gone, basically, look, if you're caught now...
But he admitted and handed everything over and said, look at me, and that was the difference between what he did and what Trump did.
Exactly. But to make sure that everything is totally above board, we now have to have a special investigation done by the same guy who's doing Trump, right? So this is the important thing is when you are dealing with this much material, and as I've said before, I've had stuff come in. Like when I left ASIO, I left with a classified document, which I immediately destroyed. It was a copy. It was not an original. So, just that goes in the barbecue and it's burnt. Right. So the thing is, there is so much intelligence lying around. There's a really interesting point where a guy had something he was taking. It was a document that he picked up off his desk. Now there was a paperclip attached to the document. As he picked the document up, it slid and caught the document underneath. That was a classified document, which he then handed on to somebody else. Oh. Right?
Pesky paperclips. There is the classic story of the UK civil servant who left, 50 documents? Yeah, 50 Ministry of Defence documents at a bus stop in Kent. That ruined his career. He was meant to become the NATO ambassador. Nope, that's gone. You're out. Well, you think you'd take a little extra care and caution.
You would. But the thing is, we're human.
I know, but still.
Now,
this is only something men would do. Women are pretty good. I don't know.
Okay,
prove me wrong.
Okay, you're kind of accurate. Okay, yes. Right now,
men have zero attention to detail. I'm just throwing it out there.
Have you seen my notes?
It looks like someone threw up in pen.
Oh, how rude. That's because you're looking it upside down. Now, let's have a look at some classic screw-ups going back through the ages.
Okay.
One of my favourites is a guy by the name of Heinrich Albert. Heinrich Albert was a diplomat in New York in 1914.
Okay. Got drunk?
Yes, that's... Well, no. Here's the great thing. Heinrich Albert's job was to try and convince Americans to come into or to support the Germans in World War One.
Oh, wow.
Because the Germans...
It's a tough sell.
The thing is, a lot of people in the US thought, yeah, Germany's right.
Well, look, and World War One, there was a reason why Germany ended up going into World War Two. But like World War One, it was tough.
Well, they didn't come in until 1917, I don't think. Right. So the thing is, the Germans really, really wanted to get the Americans on side. So they got this guy, Heinrich Albert, right? Now, Heinrich Albert was going out. He was meant to be working for the ambassador, but he was stationed in New York, and his entire job was to go out and buy shares in newspapers to try and then tilt their editorial standards. Heard that before. Right, so he was doing that. He was the paymaster for anybody that they were bringing into the United States, and he was also accessing passports so they could bring intelligence officers and, funnily enough, sailors to try and get them on board American ships, right, because they were also supplying the Europeans. So the whole thing was he was really good at what he did. He was fabulous at what he did until he caught a subway. He liked to catch a subway that would come out. It was one of the, not the underground subways, I suppose. So it was one of the ones that go, the overhead rail in New York. I can't remember what they're called. But, the subway, he liked getting on it and like just doing the circuit because it was in the sun and he could have a nap. Now, the Americans were the American intelligence. It wasn't the CIA at the time. That didn't exist until after World War II. But American intelligence were a bit suspect of this guy. This guy keeps buying shares in newspapers. What's going on? Right. So they basically started following him. And then the train jolted and he woke up suddenly and realized he was like coming up to his stop. So he jumped off the train and left his briefcase on the train. Right?
So sad. See, attention to detail.
Chunk. Opened the briefcase. There's all the information the Americans needed. He was kicked out of the country. Now, what's very interesting, a lot of people believe that while this would not have been the argument for we need to go to war, what the American intelligence did was they, instead of just like going, right, we've got this guy, let's kick him out, they basically took it to the press.
Right.
And said, this guy is trying to influence you. And the press went, how dare the Germany try to change our minds? And a lot of people believe that because of this information, a lot of Americans really swing. Yep. So in a way, he was probably the worst spy. He was doing a really good job until he didn't. Right?
Yeah, he did the opposite thing that he was sent to do.
Just interesting factotum. During the 20s and 30s.
Only if it's interesting.
Heinrich Albert wound up working as a lawyer in Germany, promoting American businesses into Germany, right? So, like, basically, this guy couldn't give a freaking toss.
No.
Now,
But I feel like that's like most men who foul. They then foul up into something on the sidelines, except if you're Scott Morrison. You can't even foul up.
Yeah, you can't foul. You're just going
even PwC doesn't want you.
God, what a terrible life. Yeah, sorry, you gave us millions upon millions, but not today.
Yeah.
Now, here's a World War II story that you're going to absolutely love.
Will I love it?
Operation Pistorius.
Okay, great.
Right? Nazi spies being inserted into the US to sabotage power infrastructure, manufacturing, blow up public transport to sow the seeds of terror, and also blow up Jewish department stores.
Great.
So there were several teams of these guys that were coming in. The first team came in, they were dropped off on Long Island from a submarine where they were immediately spotted by a Coast Guard. Literally one bloke on the coast went, excuse me, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And one of them was fluent English speaker, spoke with an American accent. Hey, it's okay, buddy. We are doing nothing but being on the beach. And then one of his friends turned around and started asking him questions in German.
Oh, God.
Right? The Coast Guard said, you wait here. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. By the time he got back, they were long gone.
Of course.
But they were like he and the bunch of guys he brought with him to arrest them watched the submarine slowly disappearing into the ocean. So they went, something's up here. What happened was it was led by a guy. The guy who led the group was a guy by the name of Dash, right? Now, Dash headed in there, got the boys into a hotel, and then went out for the next 2 days with about $1,500 American and played pinochle. Right, pinochle, which is an American style. It's a card game, right? It's a gambling game. So he went and spent all of his money and then immediately turned himself into the FBI and went, and by the way, in hotel room 257 down the road, you'll find my entire party waiting to be ordered to get onto his said jobs. So basically this guy got drunk, played a card game, ran out of money, and then went, oh, well, better hand myself into the FBI. Now, that's one.
Okay.
There was another group that basically got in there. They all went gambling and whoring and then handed themselves in. Until the last example of this was two guys came in. One was an American. Oh, that's right. One guy who was an American living in Germany and was recruited, got back to the States, took his money, went and visited his parents, bought them a new car, and again handed himself in.
Right.
He handed himself in when somebody sort of looked at him and went, "You're fighting age. Why aren't you in uniform?" And he couldn't come up with a reason why he hadn't been drafted. So he finally,
Sick. Just say you were sick.
yeah. Bone spurs. I have bones.
Yeah.
I have bone spurs. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, Ronald Reagan got out of it.
Reagan, Trump. I think Clinton got out because he was too smart. I'm not sure, but he came up with a really good excuse.
Yeah.
George W. Bush got out of it because he joined the Army Reserve or the Air Force Reserve. He was the National Guard.
See, that's smart.
Right.
We'll be the pretend soldiers.
I'll pretend to be a soldier.
Back on the shore.
Right. So he visited his parents, bought them a new car. One other guy just went to the movies until he was out of money. These guys just went. They essentially the way it's regarded is they got to America. They always put them in summer.
Yep.
Right, because it's easier to get them in summer. You don't have the weather systems that are going to make it difficult to get literal service from a submarine. So essentially, what they did is they all got there in summer and went, "This is a really nice place. Let's just drink and eat." The final one was two guys, Gimpel and Koppelau. Now, Gimpel and Koppelau, one was a diehard German loyalist, and Koppelau was an American who was actually just an opportunist. He saw a way of getting his hands on some cash.
Right.
Right. They went into New York, and basically Koppelau turned around to Gimpel and said, "Just wait in this hotel room. I'm going to go set some things up," and then blew all his money on gambling, hookers, and booze. Right?
Amazing.
In fact, when it was all exposed, when the FBI finally caught up with him, they basically turned around to the ladies of the night of New York and went, "Thank you for keeping him occupied." Because just before Christmas in 1944, he went back to Gimpel and went, "I need all the money."
Right.
Which was $40,000. That's a lot of cash back in those days.
Oh my God, yes.
That's a crap ton of money.
Yeah.
He took it at just before Christmas, and between Christmas and New Year, handed himself over to the FBI broke.
What?
He went through $40,000.
What was he doing with it?
Booze, hookers, and gambling.
That's a lot of booze, hookers, and gambling.
It's a lot of gambling because no one can drink that much booze and do that much hookering.
No.
I believe that's the
Hooking?
The hookering? No,
Hooking?
hooker.
Sexing.
Rooting. Rooting.
Sexing.
Yeah. Basically, and the FBI thanked the prostitutes of New York for
Yes.
keeping a spy off the game.
Yeah.
Right.
We thank you
Now,
for
here's
your
one.
service.
Now, I know you're going to find this hard to believe,
No.
but the British can be known to occasionally screw up with intelligence.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know. You're sitting there going, this can't possibly be true.
Shocked.
And we go to the Manhattan Project. You could almost say that we have an arms race because of one man.
Okay.
A guy by the name of Klaus Fuchs. Now, Klaus Fuchs was a German physicist who his parents were members of the Communist Party during the Nazi regime. So as soon as the Kristallnacht happened and, the Nazis were killing off communists and everybody they didn't like, Fuchs's family moved to London where Fuchs studied physics and was brilliant. He was working on what was called tubular alloys was the code word, was what they were describing the British atomic program. Now, the Americans set up the Manhattan Project and they basically turned around and went, "All right, guys, send us your brightest and your best." So the Brits turned around and went, "Well, my word, you need Klaus here. He's very good." And the Americans immediately went, "Wait a second, you've got a German physicist." Now, Albert Einstein was a German physicist, but also Albert Einstein was very, very anti-Nazi.
Yeah.
Fuchs was very anti-Nazi as well because he was a communist. Now, when the Americans went, "Great, we'll take him, but we need to vet him first," the Americans, "Oh, how dare you?
Yeah.
How very dare you even question that this man cannot be trusted? He spent up until 1950 where he was exposed, and he quite comfortably went, yeah, sorry, that was me, right? He was wasn't selling them. He was handing over all of the secrets he was learning, and his speciality on the Manhattan Project was the implosion.
Yep.
So the explosion to get critical mass, which is the hardest thing to do.
So
right?
kind of like the Titanic sub.
Yeah, right. That's what it did. But
Yep.
he did it intentionally on pieces of plutonium to make them turn into like mini suns, right? So this was the thing. This guy was basically handing everything over to the Russians. And when he was caught in 1950, the Brits turned around and went, well, you're helped with the war, because he was back in England at this point. You're helped with the war, so go home. Go on, go back to East Germany, you bloody traitor, right? And off he went, where he then spent the rest of his life building atomic weapons for the Soviet regime.
What? How irresponsible of the British.
Exactly. That's what we have prison cells for, boys.
Yeah.
Right? So there was that. Now, this is my favourite.
Okay.
I'm really excited about
Is
this.
it your fuck up?
No, it's not my favourite.
Okay.
This is a comedian who became a spy.
Oh, this is the complete opposite to you.
It's the complete opposite of
Yep.
that. You're going to love this story.
Okay.
This is a story about Hans Kohler. Hans Kohler, who was a Czechoslovakian satirist.
Okay.
Back in the late 60s, early 70s, he was posting scathing comedy sketches about the Czechoslovakian government on his radio program, and he copped a shellacking for it. Now, you would think that if your government doesn't like you making jokes about them, they would take you off air, but they didn't. They just made his life a misery. He and his wife were constantly harassed by the Czechoslovakian secret police until it came to a point where he went, I can't take this anymore, and he went to the United States. He and his wife, Hannah.
Yeah.
So Hans and Hannah, yes, that's right, Hans and Hannah went to the US where he got a doctorate in philosophy. Very intelligent man. So the CIA took one look at him and went, hang on a minute, this guy knows Czechoslovakia. And he's a philosopher. And damn it, he's very funny. Let's give him a job.
Yeah.
So they recruited him. And he wound up working in some of the highest echelon intelligence areas he could. He had access to very, very sensitive information. Here's the thing. It was all a ruse.
Oh.
He basically spent 5 years in Czechoslovakia being lambasted by the Czechoslovakian government intentionally so they could send him to the United States.
Wow.
Right? So basically he was a plant. He was a sleeper.
Yeah.
But a sleeper that basically went, what? So you want me to be an asshole for a while and then you're going to send, basically he was on air. That's why they never took him off air. They left him on air to make his life more and more and more and more miserable until he got to the United States. Now,
That is quite a system.
a brilliant system. Here's the thing. He didn't get most of his most important pieces of intel from the CIA because we're talking about the 70s here. Bell bottoms, crochet dresses,
Leave your keys in a pot.
tea parties. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly where he
Yep.
got most of his information. Because what happened was he and his wife were swingers. They did a lot of orgies.
Yep.
They did a lot of wife swapping parties.
Wow.
And while they were there,
So what do you do?
what do you do other than anal?
Yeah. Well, that's in my head now.
Yeah, no, that's going to be in your head for a while.
Yeah.
And it's good. And if you need to clear your head by going, David, how could you? Feel free to send your abuse to us at iSpy Podcast on Twitter.
At iSpy Podcast, mostly send it to David.
Yeah, just send it to me. Just
Yeah.
address it to, God, can't get that image out of my
To
head.
be honest, Twitter's become a full-on porn site now anyway.
Has it? Well, I'm
Yeah.
obviously not looking at the right things. I'm not looking at the right keywords, the right hashtags. Cover that with
We've got to get
hashtags.
on Threads.
Right.
Threads where it's at.
Yeah. So the whole thing is, right, basically he and his wife were getting tons of information from people that they were rooting at these orgies. Now, the most important point with it was they turned around every time someone went, hang on, you're a spy. And they would basically look at them and go, and you're rooting around. And that meant that all of these sources couldn't talk because they were trying to hide the fact that they were swingers and going to orgies.
Right.
I don't know. Have you ever been to an orgy?
No.
No, never been invited. I don't know why. Probably because I talk too much.
I've had a friend who's gone to a sex club.
Really?
Yeah, she told me all about it.
I went to Hellfire Club a couple of times with my mates. Just like, we should check it out. And it was just like, yeah, when I get my eyeballs back in my head and my jaw off the ground.
Apparently Paris has a lot of sex clubs where you just show up and it's like they're swinger clubs.
Oh. Yeah,
not my jam. Not my jam.
Really, I mean,
not my jam.
yeah, I find it hard enough to satisfy my wife. Why would I try to work it out with strangers?
Yeah, I know.
So basically, he was arrested. They were both arrested in 1984, imprisoned for espionage. The interesting thing was, very much like a Key Party, they were swapped.
Oh.
Yeah, prisoner swap. So basically, Czechoslovakia went, if you want your spy back, you got to give us our 2 spies back because we really miss them at the Key Party on a Friday night.
Yeah, I bet they do.
So here's the thing. The basic thing about all of this is we're dealing with an area where people make massive mistakes that have great...
if it all just becomes AI, will there be no mistakes?
There will be tons of mistakes simply because, remember, your system is only good as what you input into the system. All right? So simply put, like the bottom line, most of these problems that have been caused is by people pressing send.
Yep.
Right. That's it.
Or not pressing
without
send.
looking. The other problem that's really big is the amount of intel that we're dealing with. And we've spoken about this before, is this huge influx of material now. And be it electronic or, be it getting caught on paper clips, this is always going to run the risk of utterly running you into some horrible situations.
Well, there's an interesting TV show on Disney Plus at the moment called Class of '09, and it has this whole idea of AI basically taking over the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Oh, okay. I'm going to look at that because I'm currently finishing The Last of Us and I'm looking for something.
The Last of Us is great, but like Class of '09, it's based in the past, present, and future.
Oh, nice.
And it looks at how AI takes over FBI and runs it.
Right. Now, the other one I would have you look at, because it relates perfectly to this episode, is Slow Horses.
Oh, Slow Horses, I've seen those.
Yeah. But some
Read
of
the
them
books, seen the show.
Yeah. And that is basically...
If you haven't done Slow Horses, you're not living.
You're not a spy fan.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it. And basically it is all about what happens to people in MI5 when they screw up.
Yes.
And then what they have to do because other people are screwing up, but they won't talk about it. So that's a really good example. Like what I love about Mick Herron's writing is it's so accurate to what it's like to be in there, and right down to those politics, because that's the other problem that happens with these human errors, these insider threats.
People have relationships.
But people are also covering their own arse.
Yes, all the time.
And we always used to say there are no conspiracy theories, there's just a due lack of care.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
yes,
the next time you press send,
don't.
Well, just proofread the bloody thing before you do.
I know, you never, I always do. I am conscious of that, accidentally sending it to someone when you're talking about someone. Yeah.
Hello, Peter Dutton, mad effing witch. Samantha Maiden went, oh, okay, so that's how you feel about me. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember, always proofread the way I never did before I met Michelle and I started sending her things on WhatsApp and I'd get, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right.
Boomer fingers.
Boomer fingers. I've also got fat fingers. That's my excuse. But ladies and gentlemen, check everything.
Check it all.
Verify before you send.
Yes.